The 15th of September 2023. This is about the Gardaí and Drew Harris. My own view about Drew Harris, who is the first outside Garda Commissioner to be appointed to run the Irish police force since a man called Costigan was a civilian, was appointed way back in the 50s. And one of the most sackable jobs you can hold is to be Commissioner of the Garda Síochána. There are a lot of commissioners sacked. Ned Garvey, Paddy McLaughlin, Noreen O'Sullivan, all in 35 years. Very dangerous job. You don't last in it. It's a hard job to say, a very hard job. And Ireland having one police force makes it more difficult. In Britain and other countries, you wouldn't have one police force. You'd have like Munster, Connacht, Leinster, Dublin, and South Leinster. You'd have that type of a situation. But in Ireland, you've just one police force, and that's a lot. There's nearly 13,000 policemen and women in the force. But anyway, Drew Harris was a policeman in Northern Ireland, and when he was a young boy, his father, he was Harris as well. He was a high up officer in the Royal Irish Ulster Constabulary, and they came down to Dundalk with another member called Bob Buchanan, and they came down to gather intelligence and to talk about operations on the border, which is very good. A lot of people say they shouldn't. I think they should. You should have cooperation. And they had a meeting, but when they were on the way back, they were attacked by the IRA and they were shot dead. And that's a hard thing for Drew Harris to live up with. And there was suspicions that there was somebody tipped off the IRA. I won't go there. Nothing can be done about it now, even I could prove it. But because of that, I had a certain sympathy for him, and I felt like, well, if he'd be talking about letting an MI5 British our officer into the guards and all that, that's a load of crap, because there is already unbelievable cooperation between all the police forces of Europe. And I think even Mr. Harris was out in Dubai, was it recently, some Arab state, on about this gang in Dublin and all of that. But enough said there. Now, having said that, my sympathy and my support of Drew Harris is subject to him doing a good job and not falling into the trap that happened before. They can't get young guards to join. No one joined the force. Nobody can get teachers. Nobody wants to work for the government, because it's not the government that's wrong. It's the beggars, gets and villains of our neighbours that go into the the polling station and mark the ballot paper without any consideration for the impact that their vote will have on unfortunate young people who are given the job of protecting society, being nurses, being teachers, and all of that. We see the crack with teachers. They're forcing this old woke stuff on them and all of that. And the Gardaí, the same. A villain drunk giving them dog's abuse, and he's a man, obviously, and he says, oh, by the way, I'm transgender, and if they call him a him, then they're in trouble and they're disciplined. This crazy situation is there. I'd love to see it destroyed, but I'm afraid that Drew Harris had to go along with some of it, because we have a Green Party who's completely woke. We have Reagan on this morning bragging about he's given another relief of a grant to people who can't pay the electricity bill, when he told them before that he would bring down the price of electricity using windmills, which was a lie. So we have this disastrous government running the show, and no one wants to work for them. You get jobs abroad and everywhere else, and we'll all end up just a nation of old people with the young people gone. That is a very sad situation, but there's nothing we can do. All I can do is pin the responsibility on the people you're meeting at mass, at church, in the shop, and turn on them and tell them you did that. They don't like it. But now, the thing about Drew Harris is this. There's a vote or no conference by the rank and file members. Now, Helen McEntee lives up the road here in Nobber, and she's from a decent family, but she's a young mother. The last person you should have as Minister for Justice, and she's Minister for Justice, is a young mother with children in a border area. The last person. What would she know about appointing judges? What would she know about the law? Has she any degree in legal studies? It is absolutely crazy. A crazy, oh, and blonde hair and all that. Oh yes, and she's a woman ill. And they appointed Noreen O'Sullivan after Martin Cullinan was sacked, the commissioner, And they thought she was going to straighten out the Morris McCabe thing, and she did nothing. She was entitlement. Oh, I'm a woman. Oh. She had to be sacked or let go or resign as well. So that's the situation. Now, I'll say this about Drew Harris. Gardaí are not investigating crime anymore. There was a man and his mother, God be good to them, died down in Ballygym and stuff the other day when the television caught fire, and they had themselves so tightly barricaded into the house that they couldn't get out. And that's pure fear of being attacked. And that is a very real fear, especially if you live along a road. That is a very, very real fear for ordinary people. I know people who worked in the Gardaí that tell me that they couldn't bear to see crimes committed against property, and they knew who did it, and it wasn't their job to investigate. And when they tell the superintendent of the local area, he'd hump it off and it doesn't matter. Long ago, they'd go and investigate it. So there's nothing being investigated unless it's something to do with woke, transgenders, or something like that, or racism or something like that. And I study the law very tight because I go very close to the line of being a racist, but I'm ready for them. They'll not take me on because I'd wind them up in knots. If you want to see the way they have the racist law framed, it's nonsense. It sounds pudsey right and wobbly, waffly, and I reckon I'd whack them on it. But I'm not racist anyway. I am a wee bit racist against Irish people who vote for the traditional parties, but I've no problem with other people from abroad or anything like that, or anyone that's, we say, an Indian lady coming here to work in a nursing home or work in a shop or do your work. Yeah, I'm not against you at all. You'd be making a big mistake if you thought that I was against, or even a coloured person from Africa or something working in the meat plant. I produce beef, and we need people from Brazil and Africa to do the work there, and it's not easy work. So we have to be realistic about all this. Now, the thing about it is, there's one thing I hear about Drew Harris. The Gardaí had a roster negotiated for years and years, and big meetings held, and we want this and we want that, and they had a roster that they could stick to. There was one time the guards had to work for no overtime, and then there was a circular. It was B29, I think, of 1977, I think it was produced, and where they had to get 14 days notice. And then if you were called in after the 14 days notice, you had to get overtime. And they had that system in place, and the local guards chiefs hated it because they couldn't know a week ahead what to put the guard working, and they had to go at certain hours. So it was working out all right, though. It was trashed out good enough, and they changed the roster a few times, and there was a bit of doing it, and it was all hard work by the Guard Representative Association. But along came the queer thing, you know, the thing in the arm, and this, and this yoke. This, you know what I'm talking about? If I say what it is, I'll get a strike. You know what I'm talking about. And the Commissioner asked the Gardaí in these extreme circumstances to go on a different roster for the time being and allocated funding and all that. And that was done. The thing was done. The guards went along with it, and all right. And that was no problem. What did he do when it was over? When we got back to a sort of normal? He refused to change the roster back. He refused to change the roster back. He got a bit of leverage on the sly, and he would not give it back. And I condemn him roundly for that, if that's the truth. Any guard can easily sign on here and post underneath and correct me if I'm wrong. So there you would have it. Use the pandemic. Use it to steal the rights of workers. That's what it's basically about. But there are other issues as well. They'll only get lightweights in the guards, and you're going to see awful problems with Gardaí taking drugs and Gardaí doing all kinds of weird things because they're not the right type of people. They're not the sound people. Sound girls and sound boys will not join it. They won't put up with that crap. Unbelievable crap. And all these superintendents that get promoted up, they're all filling the interview boards full of nonsense. Oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And the interview boards are the silliest buggers you could get. And they'll come out and they'll drink to you, oh, he's a great fella. See what he said he'd do. He's going to do this. And he couldn't write his name. And you could get a fella that couldn't take a statement of an injured party in a crime, and he goes in with a whole heap of baloney and all this woke stuff, and they promote him. With the result, none of them are fit to do the basic job of taking on a crime, investigating it, getting the scene examined, going and interviewing witnesses, identifying a suspect, arresting the suspect, dealing with the suspect, getting the evidence if it's there, and preferring charges in the court. And when a guard takes on to investigate a burglary, he's very often dealing with city and other minorities and city drug addicts, city crackheads, and all of that. And when they arrest them and they go to the court, the mother and the father, there's an entourage of about 60 other senior gurriers in the court there, and they'll go to the guard and they'll say, "Oh my Johnny, what do you give him bail?" and all this. And this poor guard doesn't want looking at these misfits at all, and he has to deal with them, and it's not nice. It is not a nice situation. So guards are getting sick of it. They're getting sick of it, and they'll not, no matter how much work a guard does, arresting people and bringing them to court for crimes and burglaries and stealing people's property. When he goes up for interview, they don't want to know him, because the people that's appointing them are our Green Party lackeys, our Fianna Fáil lackeys and our Fine Gael lackeys, and Labour, full of you know what, full up to the eyebrows of that stuff that I don't want to mention here. And so they'll never get anywhere for doing the hard work. At least on my farm, when I go out and work hard until I'm tired and sleep at night, I have something to show for it. They have a lifetime with nothing to show for it. And that's where Drew Harris has failed, and that's where our government has failed, and I blame it on our neighbours. To hell with you, I do tell them that just may be walloped at in the houses. Good enough for you. I say that to them. Oh, you're a hard man to say that. How can you say that? You voted for these crap creeps, and you're going to do it again because you got a pier built down on the road, or you got the lane tarred, or you got a bit of an old pension you're entitled anywhere. You did it, and you'll do it again. And the one thing you can't stop these criminals is coming in and giving you a walloping. You can't stop it, only with locks. That's the thing about it. And if there was proper law and order, the criminals would be in jail, and they wouldn't do it. They'd be afraid to go out. But there's so little real police work, real investigating, that they can't. There's no sanction against the criminal, and there's not going to be. You can't get a fraud or anything investigated. They don't even know where to start, and their chief superintendents have no idea. They wouldn't admit that in reality. You ask them a question on law and or ask the superintendents or the inspectors. And all the inspectors has to do to get promoted is catch an unfortunate guard asleep some night in the car at 4 a.m, having a wee nap for himself, something like that, or some wee thing like that. And that's how they get promoted. They want this austerity, they want this virtue signaling, but there's no real investigating of crime, and those who do it get absolutely nowhere. To sign off, Drew Harris, I'll go up and meet you. And bring 60 of your officers in, and I'll soon tell you where to get off. You shouldn't have done what you done. You should not have taken away the agreed roster just because of that damn yoke. Oh, we had an emergency. Oh, we had our health. Well, I told the county manager in Naas, you get to hell and let me into your office, or I'll land you in the High Court in 2 days. And he backed down when we wanted to get in to see a file. They backed down. They told me they wouldn't let me in, and told me staff, people working for me, they wouldn't let me in. But they let me in. When you take the gloves off, they let you in. And if Drew Harris was handled right by the minister, and if the people who have authority over him handle him right, he'd have to do it right. And so would his officers have to do it right. But it's all this woke nonsense. And it's going to cripple us. So now, folks, tell your friends when they're worried about crime, you voted for it, you have it. The same as the crowd in New England and above in Boston and in New York. We want to be welcoming. When they were landed on their doorstep, they started to whinge and cry. And when they had thought they might have to take them into their houses, they freaked out. It's easy being generous when your hand is in someone else's pocket. Folks, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you don't agree. I don't know what we'll do about policing. It's a terrible situation. There's no young guard that's fit to be a commissioner can get up, because if he shows flair down in the local station, down in Mullingar or down in Navan, and he seems to be a sound fella and has a few courses and seems to be good and know what he's doing, or a woman either, he'll be trampled on. He'll be trampled on. The woke queer crowd are there all along the top tier of Garda management, and they will not let that person up. So he'll never get near where it would be to become a good commissioner. The commissioner in the north of the chief constable, I think he had to go, or he's very nearly on the cusp of having to resign. Drew Harris says it was like a kick in the teeth to him. Well, instead of thinking it, Drew, of it being a kick in the teeth, why don't you meet me? Why don't you meet me for an hour and let's have this out? That's what you need. And I won't kick you in the teeth or kick you anywhere else. I'll tell you a few home truths as best as I know it. We're entitled to have law and order. We're entitled to have a good minister, and we're entitled to have a good commissioner and good senior officers who are practical, sensible, do the job. It's not rocket science. That's all that's needed. I tell you, don't hold your breath. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Bye bye.